Do you know who invented our soda drinks, the carbonated water? Anyone? Good guess. Anyone? I will give you a hint. Nobody has heard it. It has to do with somebody who was Unitarian. Robert Frost, maybe. No. Actually, there's only one answer, right? So this is... Okay, I'll give you the name. Joseph Priestley. You've heard the name, right? He is very famous for discovering oxygen and a few other gases. 7, I think, was the one on his list. But he also discovered how to add carbon, infuse carbon into water. And that was the origins of our soda drinks, the Cokes that we have, right? Initially, soda drinks were used in pharmacies. They added medicine to it, so it's easier to drink it in. So they were not as tasty as today. It took a lot of other inventions and other changes through the process to get to the sodas that we know them today. But Joseph Priestley was the one who first experimented with getting there. And so this story that I want to tell you today is about him and about how religion and science started to float together. We often hear that science and religion are completely two different things, and some people still hold that. But as we have come to know that they actually talk to one another, and there's a lot in science that applies to religion and vice versa, right? There are things that we can put together. And both science and religion inspire us to wonder, question, and seek truth. They're very similar in the way that they approach the things around the world. So Joseph Priestley lived about 250 years ago, and he was a Unitarian minister. To him, science and religion were not the opposite things, but a complementary avenues of discovery. Of course, as I mentioned, he's best known as the scientist who discovered the presence of oxygen. And the way he did it is he did experiments with trees and bugs. And we don't have any children, so I guess I can share more. He actually put them in jars and sealed them and discovered that if you do that to bugs, they don't make it. If you do that to plants, they do make it. Because that's how he discovered that plants actually come up with oxygen and produce it. And so that's kind of his baseline. He told the world that plants generate oxygen and animals need oxygen to breathe, and us including need oxygen to breathe. This was not an idea that was taken for granted like it is today in those days. It was new. And in his day, he was trying to prove the existence of something you cannot see with your eyes. You cannot smell it. You can't even hear it. You can't touch it. And you can't even taste it. Have you ever tasted oxygen? Not really, right? In those days, 250 years ago, Unitarian religion was home for people who believed that we each can discover our own faith truth. The other experiments, of course, is air, gas, electricity, also that he was experimenting with. There were people, for people around him, these were very daring ideas at the time. They went against the current laws or statutes of the day, against the religious teachings of the day. And the people that agreed more with Joseph Priestley were considered dissenters from the norm. They were not really liked very much, and an angry mob destroyed Joseph Priestley's home, destroyed his laboratory, and his church. He and his wife escaped the fire and attacks. The buildings completely burned down, along with many important papers and documents and books that he had there. And Joseph and his wife decided to flee England, and they came to America. They landed in Pennsylvania, and in Pennsylvania he actually contributed and started a Unitarian church, the first one that we know in United States. That's kind of how his story ends up here. And if you think that he was discouraged to continue his experiments, wrong. He continued them. He pursued his free-thinking ideas. He discovered poisonous gas carbon monoxide in 1799, so that was already the time when he was here. And then for that he's known to be a father of modern chemistry. All of his work and accomplishments had a lot to do with coffee. Stay tuned for more. How many here are tea drinkers? Quite a few. And how many are coffee drinkers? Yes. I love coffee. Good coffee. And I'm very specific in what I call good coffee. Anyone here like that? Yes, yeah. I like coffee that is rich, strong, and flavorful. I love the smell of coffee. And it is one of my favorite drinks. Every morning I begin my day with a cup of espresso with foamed milk made by my husband. And when I take that first sip, I savor it. Every time it surprises me how good it tastes. And I just have to say, what can be better than that? When I received this title, Espresso, Faith, and Other Stimulants, there was no way I was going to talk about anything else, and I apologize to the tea lovers here. I did mention tea because I did not want to completely talk to only half of the congregation here. The coffee and tea both share something. There's caffeine in both, right? So these are drinks that we have daily. If not daily, then often, right? Anyways. But I want to talk about coffee more and how it changed the world. Many of you may know the Ethiopian legend about the origins of coffee beans. The goat herder Kaldi first discovered the potential of the coffee beans. He had goats that were eating berries from a certain tree, and after they've eaten, they were so energetic that they would not sleep at night. So he reported his findings to the abbot at the local monastery. The abbot made a drink with these berries and then discovered that that kept him alert, through the long hours of the evening prayers. That's when the abbot shared his discovery with other monks in the monastery, and the knowledge of this drink began to spread first through the Arabian Peninsula in that area in the 15th and 16th century, and then by the 17th century it reached Europe. At first, when coffee arrived to Europe, it was a controversial drink. treated with a lot of suspicion. And even the Pope, the Italian Pope, Clement VIII, was asked to intervene. That's how significant the controversy was. We needed the papal opinion about it. Well, he decided to taste it. And that, I think, is a really good thing that the Pope decided to actually try it before just deciding, voting based on God's opinion. When the Pope tasted, he actually liked it. And that's how coffee got the Pope's approval. But even though the controversy continued, Pope's approval didn't fix everything, people still started using and drinking this coffee, and coffee houses began to pop up throughout Europe, in different main cities, different countries in Europe. By mid-17th century, there were over 300 coffee houses in London. That was quite widespread by that time already. But what was different for the European coffee houses was the culture around them. In the coffee houses, the people that gathered were businessmen, artists, scientists, religious professionals. They all came together and socialized and exchanged ideas, discovered new ideas through one another. It was a place where these ideas were spreading more than other gathering places. This is the place where people learned that one can use reason and scientific experimentation to discover how things work. That was a new thing for that time frame. So what does it have to do with Joseph Priestley? It was in the coffee house where Joseph Priestley met his friends, Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin. And they encouraged Joseph to continue his experiments. They all were experimenting with electricity and other things, and they shared their discoveries and their struggles and the experimentation if something went sour. And it was a place of growth and learning at the time. And so, as I mentioned, that in England at that time, there were very strict legal statutes. They required that one had to conform to the Church of England. And the doctrine that was part of the England's church world. Anyone who slightly shifted away were called dissenters. Any religious group who slightly challenged the opinion and said, well, what if this may have been true? They were prohibited, they were barred from having any gatherings. They could not just come together and exchange their thoughts and ideas. So coffee houses became the place for these gatherings. Joseph Priestley was raised by his aunt, Sarah Kiley, after his mother had died. And he was among those dissenters. He had a friendship with theologian Theophilus Lindsay, who started the Essex Chapel in England, who is also known as a Unitarian congregation in England, the first one that had a Unitarian minister. They were also dissenters. They were also the ones that were kind of on the edge. UU's always been on the edge, I think. But through this friendship with Lindsay, Priestley also embraced Unitarian ideas a lot more fully. Priestley was liberal and radical for that time. He argued that all beliefs should be able to stand the scientific scrutiny of experimental investigations. Challenged the authority right there. So this is his political views and beliefs, religious attitudes that were the ones that provoked the riots, where his home and was destroyed. And so he moved to America in 1794, where his friends were. Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin were in America at that time. And so he settled in Northumberland, Pennsylvania. Can somebody say it out loud? Northumberland, Pennsylvania. And that's where he founded the first Unitarian church in America. So there's slightly a more theological angle for this. For you all know, mostly, that Unitarian Universalism as a faith was born when Unitarian and Universalist church decided to merge. So the Unitarian and Universalist. So this is one of our ancestors. Unitarian church is our ancestors that gave birth to our faith today. But the Unitarian church in England and the Unitarian church here in America had slight differences. They were not the same. And the difference has to do with Great Awakening that happened here in the States, with very strong Calvinist theological teachings. And Calvinist teachings emphasize that human beings are doomed. They are depraved. We are not salvageable. We're so sinful innately. And Unitarians were not happy with that thought. That was the basic difference. They all agreed on the to kind of abandon the Trinity doctrine, right? So the Trinity was common to both of these groups, but the understanding that human being actually is not completely doomed, that human being is not completely fallen and sinful, was what distinguished these two groups. It gave rise to more people joining, and then we had a lot more Unitarian churches that gave rise to our faith today. When we think back about the era of Enlightenment, it was the time that shifted the way people think, the way people believe, the way they go about epistemology. It's a fancy word about how do we know what things are. Because before Enlightenment, people, the only way they knew things was through religion, through God's revelation that was pretty much sealed, mostly. But Enlightenment gave the idea that reason could be used to know things, that scientific experimentation could be used to know things. And if you know, famous Enlightenment thinkers were John Locke, Rousseau, Adam Smith, Immanuel Kant, Isaac Newton, and they made quite fundamental changes. And all of this because of coffee, because they had a place to gather and exchange their ideas. They didn't have printing, they didn't have internet to spread their thoughts. It was all in the conversation that they could actually share their ideas. So why coffee and why not some other club or other places? Before the coffee houses, people gathered at beer houses or ale houses. They might drink wine or beer, or they called it ale probably at the time. Tom Standage writes, "The impact of the introduction of coffee into Europe during the 17th century was particularly noticeable, since the most common beverages at the time, even at breakfast, were weak, small beer and wine. Those who drank coffee instead of alcohol began their day alert and stimulated rather than relaxed and mildly inebriated. and the quality and quantity of their work improved. Western Europe began to emerge from an alcoholic haze that had lasted for centuries. Here we go. Caffeine is a stimulant, and it's probably one of the most known and used common drug that we have, and we even allow our children to take it in the soda drinks, right? It was first discovered in China around 1000 BC in tea, and then later in coffee. Michael Pollan has written a book on coffee. It's a really long book also. And he tells us that this drug acts on our nervous system by suppressing the adenosine, the chemical that helps to make us sleepy. And he notes that before our time, before there were supplies of portable water, usable water that would be clean and not filtered and drinkable, before that time, boiled beverages like tea and coffee were the safest thing for the person to drink. Well, also an alternative to alcohol, which also probably would be safer than the mud water from the pond. Pollan also continues to points out that there are health benefits that are attributed to caffeine, and they're confirmed by the science. Taken in moderation, coffee and tea can decrease the risk of several cancers, as well as cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, and Parkinson's disease. Caffeine has an ability to improve our focus and ability to concentrate, and these aspects were instrumental to drive enlightenment thinking. But it also, much later, was key in transforming work and labor environment through the Industrial Revolution and then generations since. The coffee break, created in the United States in the 1940s, was a way to increase worker output. Pollan says, the best evidence of caffeine's gift to capitalism. So I've been singing praises to coffee, how it changed the world, how it changed our faith, and even continues to shape us. UUs have actually written a song to coffee, set but to the music, holy, holy, holy. It just goes, coffee, coffee, coffee. Because it continues to affect our lives and be part of our lives. And if you don't believe me, take away a coffee hour from a UU congregation. There are wonderful benefits to coffee, wonderful benefits that stimulant can bring to us. But I also want to bring in a word of caution. The coffee industry itself has a problematic history. It was built on the backs of the slaves and forced labor, and some places in the world still continues to use unfair labor practices to harvest coffee. And the other caution is, I did mention the moderation aspect. Stimulants are beneficial only in limited doses and when administered properly. And I'm not even here talking about illegal things. Those are illegal for a reason. It is very easy to develop addiction and misuse the drugs that are meant to help us. And then we find ourselves in a deeper trouble than the one we started with that led to us to even try the stimulant. The addiction takes away our ability to control our lives It brings harm to ourselves and then to others who live around us and care for us. According to American Addiction Center, 7% of U.S. population, which is more than 10 million people, misuse a type of a central nervous system stimulant every year. And the consequences are significant health problems, including mental health issues and even death. The one thing that all healthcare specialists and scientists agree on is that to treat addiction, a person needs help. This is not something that one can overcome by oneself. And if there's anything you take away from this sermon, I hope this is the part you remember. Recovering from addiction is not a solo journey. So one thing is for sure, stimulants are powerful. They can move us to do things, to come up with ideas. They can even change the world, create our faith, change our faith as we continue to grow and learn. What helps you to keep going? What gives you the inspiration and motivation to learn and grow, to discover new ideas and new ways of doing things? What moves you to create? What drives you to make our world a better place for all? What helps you to stay awake to the moment, through my sermon, for example? What helps you to notice life's miracles and wonders around us? Thich Nhat Hanh, a Vietnamese Buddhist monk and peace activist, invites us to be mindful in our eating and drinking. The reading that we heard earlier, he says, the way we drink our tea can transform our lives if we truly devote our attention to it. Holding a cup of tea or coffee, inhaling its aroma, tasting its flavor, can bring us great joy. It can help us feel connected to the earth, to the history and all it took to discover the drink, to become aware of places and everyone involved in growing and harvesting and delivering the drink to our doorstep. And the practice of noticing the drink and holding and looking at it makes us slow down and be alert to the moment. In that moment, we may see that there is more to life than we could possibly have imagined. Notice that we are part of this world, part of everyone around us, and we have something to offer to this world. So next time you hold a cup of tea or coffee in your hands, you may want to look deeply into your drink and enjoy the gift of the Mother Earth, knowing that your drink contains the whole universe, including you. And you can make a world a place of light as well.